Welcome to the Town Hall. For those of you who are in the audience, this is an open forum for anyone to ask members of the organizing committee any questions they want. And so I thought we would just start by having the members of the organizing committee who are here today to briefly introduce themselves, and then we can move on. So my name is Yi Song. My day job, I'm a professor at Caltech in Los Angeles, and I'm the general chair.
Hello everyone, I'm Carl Vondrick. I'm the senior program chair.
Hey, this is Violet Pan. I'm a program chair.
Hi guys, I'm Luis, and together with Yanon, workshop chair, and Merve and Pierre and Aji, who are unfortunately not here today, but yeah, that's us.
All right. Hello, my name is Yanan Sui. I'm a faculty member at Tsinghua University in Beijing, working together with Luis and the rest three workshop chairs. I'm also one of the workshop chairs. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jahao Chen. I work at New York City's Office of Technology and Innovation, but I'm here in my personal capacity, so I am not representing the city. I'm here to represent instead the ethics review process.
Hello, everyone. I'm Fei Sha. I'm from Google Research, one of the program chairs.
Hi, everybody. I'm Leo. I'm one of the blog post chairs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Freda Shi. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Waterloo, and I'm the mentorship ICLR chairs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Grant. I'm a postdoc at UCL, and I'm one of the DEI chairs alongside Pablo Samuel Castro.
Great. So if people have questions, and please don't be shy. Last year we had quite a few questions, albeit in a room much more cozier than this one. There are, of course, microphones. And so if you have questions, please ask away. This is really a time for you to ask questions. And in the meantime, maybe I will have Erin start with some interesting statistics about DEI and our efforts to support that.
Slide, please. Fantastic. All right, so the DEI chairs, one of the main responsibilities for us this year, as it is every year, is to allocate the funding that ICLR puts aside for students and other contributors to the conference. So like last year, we supported many attendees to come attend ICLR in person, and also a few virtual attendees who couldn't, for whatever reason, come to the conference. And in order to do that, we have this huge application process where participants fill out a form that details their affiliations, why they need funding, why the conference would benefit them, and also details their contributions to the conference. So we look at if they've submitted if they have an accepted paper, if they have a workshop paper, if they have a blog post, have they reviewed, all sorts of ways in which people can contribute to ICLR. And then we look at the people who we upweight through this process, who are really great contributors, who have need for financial assistance, and who would really benefit from attending ICLR in person. And we allocate them funding in a few tiers of assistance. So our max assistance amount is around 1,500 USD. And so that means that we're able to support, I think this year, several hundred recipients to come attend ICLR in person through both cash reimbursement and providing them with a hotel stay. And also our main form of assistance is just giving people registration reimbursements, because as I'm sure you know, the registration has grown a bit in cost, and that's actually a way that we can lessen the burden of attending ICLR in person. So I'm not sure if you can see the details on these slides, but we've broken down the proportions of the applicants in terms of their country in which they're based, in terms of both the applicants and the awardees. So our applicants tend to be distributed 1/3 each across the US, East Asia, and all of the other regions that attend ICLR. And our awardees this year in particular were primarily based in the US, and that's because of the prior proportion of those applicants, and also because we take into account the cost of actually attending ICLR in person. And this was also true, I think, for Europe. So those were proportionally more this year, whereas in last year, the largest country of residence of awardees was East Asia, because the conference was elsewhere. So yeah, happy to answer any questions about these statistics. I'll move on to, I think the volunteer chairs are not here, so I'll just state briefly that also we have volunteers at the conference who didn't necessarily receive financial support, but were weighted through this process of us looking at their contributions to the conference. And those people had to complete a shift to receive a registration reimbursement, and there were about 80 of these folks. So those are the two ways that we can support people to attend ICLR in person. Next slide, please. Great. So we have, of course, issues or challenges to bringing people to attend ICLR in person. And one of the main parts of this year in particular was the travel cost. Because for many of the people that traditionally attend ICLR are traveling longer to come to Singapore. So we really want to have the conference in different locations so that we can have different parts of the globe come to attend ICLR in person and benefit from the community. But it really it sort of changes the cost to attendees. And so this means that some people actually had to decline our financial assistance because we decided that there was a max amount because we want to distribute the funds, and that max amount wasn't actually able to support or to reimburse them for all of their expenses. So that was a little unfortunate this year, and we're thinking about ways to improve that for next year. And the second part, which happened quite late on in the financial assistance process, was the changes to the exit and entry procedures in the US. So this means that many people were afraid to leave the US because they weren't certain that they could re-enter. And some of those people had received financial assistance. And so eventually they had to decline this financial assistance and weren't able to come to the conference in person. So that was quite unfortunate as well. Next slide, please. All right, and then on another topic, I'll just mention that we have some affinity socials every year at ICLR, and the 3 that we hosted this year, these are grassroots initiatives, so they're run by the affinity groups that appear at other conferences. We had Muslims in Machine Learning and Women in Machine Learning over the past 2 days, and today we have, I'm sorry, the label's not there, but this is Queer in AI. They have a social at 5:30 p.m. today, so you can still catch this one even if you missed the other 2 socials. And I think that's it I have for DEI.
Thank you, Aaron. As a reminder, if people have questions, there are the microphones, and we are really here to answer questions that you may have. In the meantime, maybe we can have Luis or Yanan talk a little bit about the workshop process.
Okay, so maybe, so can you go to the 3rd slide? Sorry if I'm messing up your order. Yeah, I think this is maybe a good TLDR. So workshops are different, obviously, from the paper track. We don't really look or assess technical content. It's more about the ability to kind of highlight new topics, bring together a community. And I just briefly wanted to highlight kind of what we put emphasis on this year. So you can always do like incremental, small changes that you can actually execute. For us, a big priority was to make the decisions more transparent for kind of organic historical reasons. In the past, ICLR workshops, usually the reviews were not disclosed. So for us, that was an important change to make so that people who submitted a proposal can also understand what the reviewers said and why their workshop was accepted or rejected. Then another big piece was our reasoning is we all come to these places for ICLR once a year, and like Aaron said, put a lot of money on the table to make it happen and travel to the city. And then we want to discuss our research. And in the past, we always had exceedingly amount of proposals that we couldn't accept, and we thought that's a pity because everybody's in town and they just want a room to kind of talk about their crazy ideas. So for us, a big priority was to double the capacity so that more people can have their workshop accepted and have a nice event together with their community. So that's what was another big change, and also thanks to Yisong and the whole kind of logistics team at ICLR who actually made that happen. And then in terms of the editorial process, similar to papers, there are reviewers, so we rely mainly on the reviewer signal. One kind of editorial filter that we apply to the workshop selection is if there are similarly rated workshops, we try to emphasize workshops that have a footing in the local community, so that we don't just end up with workshops from Europe or the US, but actually have a good mix also of the local hubs here in Singapore and the surrounding countries in Asia. And then together with Erin and Pablo, the tiny papers were integrated into the workshops. So there was some technical and kind of guidance, hand-holding support necessary. And I think, yeah, that was also a smooth process. Maybe we go back to the stats. I don't know, Jan, you do want to go through that?
Maybe sure. Right. So we'll quickly go through some statistics this year. We have 122 proposals submitted, comparing to 103 in last year. So this is a mild increase, something like 1.2 times. And we tried hard to recruit experienced reviewers and also representative reviewers to help us to review and determine the quality and the spread of the workshops. So we end up having a lot of reviewers, and we are fortunate because this year ICLR decided to have 2 days for the workshops instead of 1 day. So this place can handle 40 workshops in total, which doubles the size of last year. Since we have 40 in total, so we can do some statistics based on that. So maybe we can go to the next page. So you can see the keywords. We removed the keyword ICLR, ICLR for sure, right? Because that's not the real statistics, right? So we're at the International Conference on Learning Representation. We don't see the word representation happening a lot, but definitely learning is the #1 keyword in our workshop titles. And we know foundation models are prevalent. So we see that models, foundation, machine learning, understanding AI, alignment, generative, those are also our keywords this year. Yeah. So as Luis mentioned, this year we tried hard to make the reviewing and decision-making process to be more transparent and to be more distributed based on reviewers' comments. So there are great advantage of that. And on the other hand, so in the next 2 days during workshops, you may also experience that, this year there are quite some workshops, they may focus on quite similar stuff. Right, because in the previous years, the workshop chairs, they could do more separation over topics. So this year, part of the reason is language model, the foundation models, they're so prevalent. So we see a lot of submission on that topic, and also our reviewers are also quite happy about having stronger representation of the foundation models, large language model workshops. Yeah, so with 40 workshops, we're gonna experience more overlaps in terms of topics. Yeah, so we hope that you could enjoy the workshops. And if you figure out there are some problems comparing to previous years or anything, please let us know. Yeah, so that we'll let the workshop chairs for the next year's ICLR to make the workshops even better. Yeah.
As a reminder, if you have questions, please feel free to come up to one of the microphones and ask. But maybe I will ask one that gets asked maybe every year in the last few years, which is, it seems like these workshops are becoming mini conferences in their own right. Whereas in the past, it's been about discussion of preliminary research. It's been more about exciting new ideas, and which requires not a very perhaps a less rigorous review process to get ideas into the workshops, because that's how you discuss preliminary ideas. But once these workshops get really crowded, then you have to start being more rigorous in these things, and then it loses the feel necessarily of what workshops are all about. So I'm curious if the workshop chairs have any thoughts on sort of this dynamic.
So I think what we mentioned at the beginning, that was already one of the kind of policies with the tiny papers, is to kind of invigorate that exploratory part. Obviously, as you say, there is a tremendous growth in just all the ML venues across the board, which also extends to the workshops. So it's an ongoing, I think, challenge to kind of moderate or balance these goals. On the one hand, a lot of undergrads and PhD students obviously want to present their work, and leading to also high submissions in the workshops, and then this translates to competition there and also more professional reviewing cycles. On the other hand, I think we still have a pretty clear distinction in terms of the rigor. So if you compare the main track and the workshop track, I think most of the workshops are still more permissive and also try to encourage kind of early work to be present. And if you haven't completely polished the paper or are still early in the idea, I think there's still room to present that. But it is an ongoing challenge, I would say. I don't know, Yanan, if you've.
Sure. Yeah. So those of you who got involved in, say, workshop proposals or workshop preparations, you may remember that we as workshop chairs actually encourage you to include not only our presentations, right, but also posters, some the spotlights, to be more vivid, to make it a real workshop. Instead of just the continual of our sessions of the main conference, and we really want the workshops to be encouraging and starting from this year, you probably also see from news from a lot of resources that people are trying to use language models to generate content, and starting from the DEI track, the tiny paper track, and also some workshop track. But it actually is not a very great fit at the moment, because workshops and the DEI tiny papers, they're very encouraging, right? They're not to be quite discriminative, right? To distinguish those things. They're trying to encourage any meaningful things and ideas to be shared during the workshop. So this year there are some starting things on that. So we would expect things are becoming more and more in the following years. Yeah. So that's something. Yeah. So if you have questions, feel free to ask, and we can discuss further later. Yeah.
Okay, maybe another topic that is perhaps a bit controversial is the reciprocal reviewing requirement. I think some of the computer vision conferences have taken this to an extreme level compared to what we're doing in machine learning. Nonetheless, there is a sort of a common trend, which is we require more reviewers given this explosive growth in the various AI venues. And reciprocal reviewing is one way to deal with this. And I thought maybe the program chairs can comment on what we implemented this year.
Yeah, so we started a new process this year where if you submit a paper, then at least one of the authors needs to serve as a reviewer. We also said that if you submit 3 papers, then you yourself must serve as a reviewer. And the reason why we did this was we wanted to ensure that the reviewer pool is qualified to do reviews, and that makes sure when you submit your own paper that you have great reviewers reviewing it. So overall, we were pretty happy about this. How this turned out. We had the largest ICLR to date with 60% growth in papers. And so this created a reviewer pool of 21,000 reviewers. And consequently, the number of papers that each reviewer had to review is actually much lower than before. So each person had to review on average 2.1 papers. This also had many more senior reviewers inside the pool. So there's a lot more professors who are actually doing the reviews. So overall, I think we thought this was a positive change. I know some people were disappointed about this change because they had to start to review once again. But overall, I think it was positive. We offered exceptions for a variety of cases, like if you were at military leave or parental leave, or you're already serving in some other major service role, we granted a exception. It'll be it's still up for a decision as to whether we continue this policy for next year or not. But overall, we feel it was a good choice.
So I'm going to add a little bit. So I think first there are exceptions. There were exceptions, but not a whole lot, and with valid reasons, and they were granted. And I think I want to echo and emphasize again that is the purpose of doing this experiment is to improve the quality of the reviewer pool, and that indeed translated some evidence of very positive reviews. I think this is a bit of anecdotal. We haven't done that, but several of us as a program chair, we do receive from private message to say the reviews looks good and quality is quite unexpected higher this year. So that's a very positive impact we see.
If you go to the next slide, I think it's So one of the things we wanted to study was by implementing this rule, you have many reviewers who also have a paper, right, that are in consideration. So there's a question about whether those reviewers are going to be more harsh or not, right? Because you could try to, there's a concern that these reviewers could try to game the system by punishing everyone else that their own paper is going to get accepted. The way decisions work at ICLR is that it's all independent. So your paper is evaluated on its own, not in comparison to everything else. But we wanted to check for this in any ways. So what this plot is showing is basically a histogram of the review scores. The bottom from strong wrong reject to reject, borderline reject, and so on. And then the histogram bars are broken down by, for each reviewer, how many papers they submitted. And so you can see this trend that no matter who you are, you're reluctant to hand out a accept review, right? Those accept review bar is actually much lower, regardless of who you are. But there is a slight trend that the more papers you submit, the harsher your review is. And it's hard to say whether this is people trying to game the system or it's just that we're recruiting reviewers who are more experienced. And so it's hard for us to disentangle that. If you go to the next slide, Yusong, this effect mostly disappears when it comes down to the AC making the decision. Yeah.
Again, as a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. But I thought maybe in the meantime, we can move on to the ethics review process, which is of course, it exists in other conferences, but it's the first time it's been implemented in its formal form at ICLR. And Jahao, maybe you can comment a bit on that.
Yeah, so again, I'm here to represent the Ethics Review Committee. Olga Rysakovsky is the main hero here to make this process happen. Nina, Remy, and Jayu are unfortunately not here, but you're stuck with me. So what's new in ICLR this year is that we invited reviewers to flag papers for ethics review. And if the AC confirmed the flag through their own analysis, then we would review that paper. The issues that we cover are described in ICLR's Code of Ethics, things like privacy, legal concerns, safety, human subject data. And in the process, we were very clear that we do not want ethics review to be punitive, but rather an opportunity to provide an additional layer of constructive feedback. Nevertheless, we requested that ACs verify that the concerns that we raised in ethics review are addressed in the camera-ready version prior to acceptance. If you move on to the next slide, please. So this Sankey diagram gives you an idea of the workflow and also the timeline. So we started the ethics review process in late December with 150 papers that were both flagged by reviewers and also conditionally accepted by the ACs at that point. We asked the ACs to sanity check the reviewer flags that actually removed about half the papers from consideration. And we got back a total of 74 papers. Most of them came with some notes from the AC. A few of them did not. We read all of them, and of the 6 of them, we couldn't find any discernible issue. So we then removed those from the discussion pool. And finally, we were left with 68 papers to look through. Again, just to point out, the the fact that we're not punitive. Like no paper was rejected because of the ethics review process, and you can see the breakdown of papers that were accepted in the various categories. So we're really here to just provide feedback for the ACs to make the final decisions. If you could move on, please. So this slide summarizes some of the issues that we saw. So we did our own clustering of concerns that we saw that were common themes in the papers. So at the start of the discussion process, we saw a couple of things. So some of the interesting ones maybe are the fact that the paper describes some sort of adversarial attack method, but doesn't describe mitigations or doesn't discuss them in enough detail. Some papers were flagged as potential for misuse, deepfakes, that kind of thing. Some were flagged because there was little to no description of the limitations of the approach, so we wanted a more balanced discussion. Some of them were flagged by ACs as needing additional review. So the review here was really that there was some significant ethics concern that was not addressed in the current reviews. There was a request to do that. Owing to time constraints, we did not actually do these reviews. We gave a fairly light review of what the issue was, just to understand and uncover what the issue was, and gave that as feedback to the ACs. The fifth one was legality issues around data. This one turned out to be really common, and unfortunately, it's also the one that we have the least ability to control, since none of us are lawyers, and we're not in the business of deciding if papers are legal or illegal at ICLR. Rather, we want to focus on the scientific merits of the papers. And so what we did for those papers was to acknowledge that there could be legal risks involved, and the authors need to be responsible for any such concerns that come up in the actual usage of their paper or publication of their paper. And then finally, there were issues around human subject experimentation. So these were typically things like data was collected about human subjects, but it was unclear if there was a HRB or IRB process that was followed. And so that was something that was flagged. So after discussion, we categorized the various kinds of issues that came up through our deliberation. And so legality of data is by far and away the largest one. Misuse and potential harms was the second. There were a few scientific excellence issues, which concerns around plagiarism or quality of the experiments. And then bias actually was surprisingly a small category at the end. So explicit discrimination concerns turned out not to be a major source of ethics issues this year. If we move on to the next slide, please. So this is my attempt to post-process the results by going back to ICLR's Code of Ethics to understand the various categories that were described in the Code of Ethics. And you can see that actually it's very, very unbalanced. There's as we described before, potential harm in the sense of misuse and legality of data are two of the big categories, and then other concerns. So for me personally, privacy and confidentiality, it was not clear to me what the distinction was. So I just lumped all of them together under privacy concerns. And then two of them turned out to be false positives. So after a lot of deliberation, we decided that actually there was not an issue that we wanted to raise as feedback. So that's the breakdown of the ethics review process.
Maybe we should move on to the next topic, which is a sore spot for me, something that I had to contend with quite a bit when I was senior program chair last year, which is various code of conduct and code of ethics violations in terms of academic conduct. And maybe Carl can chime in on his thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, so we had a large number of cases of plagiarism. These were often reported by the authors who were the victim. So they would see, because I guess benefit of ICLR is everything is public, so you can go browse what's being submitted. And so that is actually useful for us to identify plagiarism. We had a variety of different cases. Some of them were just straight up copying, like they had copied the paper word for word, figure for figure, but changed the names on it. Those got rejected right away. There's no question. And there's everything all the way to just, you took an idea but didn't cite that idea, and the issue is more about just you need to add a citation, and everything in between too. So this is a serious issue, and there was at least 30 cases about this that we had to deal with, that we know about. So for the ones that are clear plagiarism, there's going to be a policy put in place that will punish the people who are involved in plagiarism. This varies on how strong the plagiarism was. I think up to including banning them from the conference. So the ICLR board will be the one making these decisions here.
Did you have a question?
Hi, I'm Tobias. I don't have like a question on this specific thing, but rather like a more general question about like the size and scope of this conference. I mean, I think the first keynote speaker, Zico Kolter, is also like kind of reminiscent of how this whole thing started at like, I think 30-ish papers, and now we are like at many, many thousands. I'm just wondering, has this ever been like the goal to go so big? And are you like actually happy that it is so big? Or do you also think some things, well, there's some downsides to that you may want to avoid? I mean, for me personally, it's like a very good experience to see like so many cool ideas. But at the same time, there's like so many things and ideas that I have to ingest in 3 days. And I feel like my capacity of taking many more things in is also kind of maxed out. So I don't know, some thoughts on that?
I think while the keynotes are coming at this from a certain perspective of nostalgia, maybe it would be good to have some of the more junior researchers on the panel chime in. Maybe Leo, do you want to chime in terms of your perspective about the growth from a more newcomer point of view compared to the keynote speakers?
Okay, interesting question. So a lot of my PhD students actually come to me and ask me if the acceptance rate will be lower this year because they cannot believe that we will fit another venue that can actually fit, I don't know, 20,000 people. So this is one perspective that I get from very new researchers in this topic. I personally don't have an issue with too many topics being present at the conference because everyone has their own niche, and it's actually not that easy to find researchers that work exactly on the topic that excites you most. So I see it as an opportunity to actually be able to find exactly these kinds of topics and people that work on these problems that are also interested in, specifically in such a general conference such as ICLR. But I would also be interested in, will there be a point where there are too many people? Can we fit all these people then in the same conference?
So certainly from a logistical point of view, there are fewer and fewer physical venues that can fit a conference the size of ICLR, let alone for sure a conference the size of NeurIPS. At some point, we might be restricted to just 5 or 6 locations, which would make traveling kind of boring for most people who are used to going to more exotic locations, or that's one of the things they look forward to as part of the conference experience. In terms of the overall growth of the conference, from my perspective, as someone who went to their first AI conference in 2007, 18 years ago, I think the energy here is amazing. I would not want that to be taken away, which would be necessarily part of the equation if we were to force a certain amount of capacity constraint in these conferences. I do think that we can do better in terms of helping people find each other, helping people find ideas, helping people connect to each other. I think this is also reflected in the noisiness that we experience in the review process, where reviewers misread the paper slightly and they ask for all these ablation studies in comparison to these other related works, and everyone hates everyone, and it's just part of the noisiness of the process. And I think there can even be technological solutions to help us clean that up. But I would hate to go back to a time when that energy level was artificially capped. Yeah. Question. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm genuinely feeling very exciting to see a lot of those conferences, especially in AI and machine learning, to become bigger and bigger. That also means there are a lot of submissions, probably increasing in a very fast speed every year. I read earlier before this conference that there were some efforts in utilizing large language model to provide feedbacks for a part of the reviewers. I find it's very interesting. So my question there is there any sort of attitude or plan around sort of scaling this effort in the future, not only providing feedbacks to the reviewers, but also practicing, for example, allowing some effort in utilizing LLM to review the paper from some angle in a structured way or in a regulated way? I just wonder, is there any thinking around it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did pilot this system led by James Joe and his students that provided this feedback to a subset of the reviewers. We did a survey that went out, and I think you can still respond to that survey. So if you please respond to the survey, we're still gathering feedback on how well that went. I think our anecdotal impression is that it helped in some cases. And so we haven't decided whether we will continue that for next year or not. If you felt the survey that was sent to everyone, that would be fantastic. I don't think we should ever use an LLM to do the review completely. I think we want to select the papers that are the most surprising and can have the most impact. And I do think that science is ultimately, and research is ultimately a social topic. And so we want humans actually deciding everything about papers. That said, I do think LLMs can be very useful tools for people to better understand the large volume of papers that we have.
Thank you.
Okay, I can supplement a little bit. I also completely agree with Carl that I think we shouldn't use a large language model to evaluate, automatically review the papers. And I think I'm from NLP community, and I think it's explicitly forbidden in our guideline to have large language model review our papers. And also, I think a further push and encouragement of everyone to send us feedbacks. My impression by talking to my psycho, it seems that it helped more for junior people who actually sometimes don't know how to write good reviews, whereas really experienced people, they usually don't feel LLMs are that useful. But again, that's just my very biased sample for people from around me. So I think we really want broader feedbacks from the community.
So I think this is a interesting experiment, and I think many things already been said by Carl and Violet. There's some feedbacks. We analyze a little bit ourselves. We see some positive ones. Again, being specific, what is a good review, and the LM agent was able to provide some suggestions. But it's also beyond the texture analysis. It also have a certain, sort of a psychological effect. We also see people, at least in my recollection, there's like one case thinking this is a valid human generated review, but they think it's generated by LM. Turns out it's a false alarm. So that happens. Again, so I think we when we designed this, we are very careful and very cautious about the utility, the scope, and James did a wonderful job with his team and carefully analyze this and carefully set up the experiments. And hopefully, in future, we can get more feedback from the community and also share our deep analysis results.
Just comment from the ethics review process. I have been ethics chair for NeurIPS for the past 2 years, and we've actually had reviews flagged for ethics review because they were suspected to be LLM generated. We even found examples of ethics reviews themselves that were very likely to be LLM generated. So there are ethics questions here that definitely need to be resolved. But just to put it more positively on this, I think maybe it's a good idea to think about some sort of acceptable use policy for LLMs, distinguishing between LLM created content versus LLM assisted content for like editing, refining, that kind of thing.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Yeah.
All right. So my question is related to the point just made that we want this to be a human process. I'm going to push back a little bit as an area chair on this. I saw this both in ICLR and currently in ICML, that there is very high correlation with the papers that are top ranked with reviewers, that they are very homogeneous in terms of the topic, even though the pool of papers I had as area chair was much more diverse, right? So I'm going to push back a little bit that maybe the LLM can actually provide more diversity on that topic rather than less, which is I don't know if there is a solution to that, but it seems people are currently, and we have seen this in the posters, I think, people are currently very, very excited about LLMs, which pushes every other topic down. So yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts about this.
Okay, so I'll give you maybe an indirect answer. I've been around the block a few times. I remember when NeurIPS was dominated by kernel machines and SVMs, the good old days, right? And deep learning comparatively had a much smaller percentage of the fraction of the papers, but it was not zero. So from a pure diversity point of view, I think LLMs are the most popular topic, and I think it's good to acknowledge that. But I don't think the representation of other topics is zero, and I don't think it'll ever go to zero. And once other topics correspondingly become more important or more popular, it will come back up. So from the purely sort of diversity dynamic point of view of paper topics, I think this is just a very natural cycle. In terms of your specific question, whether LLMs themselves can improve diversity maybe more so than it does now, maybe I'll defer to some of the other panelists to offer their quick thoughts before we close.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I don't know. I don't want to speculate here. I mean, it could or it could not. And we don't want to do experiments on this process too much because the conference, like, there's value currently in the process. So we don't want to destroy that. But yeah, it's very interesting. We'll think more about that. So.
Okay, we do not want to keep the next keynote waiting, so let's cut it here and get ready for the next keynote. Thank you all.